for our call today. My name is David Brizendine, the account manager and librarian with Backstage Library Works. If you're joining our call, you may be feeling the first pangs of an ILS migration migraine. You're not alone, and you've come to the right place. Moving to a new ILS is a monumental task, and wrangling all of your bibliographic metadata can be a headache, but fear not. We're excited to have Casey Cheney, Vice President of Automation Services at Backstage Library Works, join us for a brief presentation and discussion today. Casey is an expert at navigating these challenges and leads a team that delivers authority control, record enrichment, and other metadata services for Backstage. Casey will share tips on planning, preventing common issues, optimizing your metadata, and recovering from bumps along the way. We are recording this presentation and the lines are muted. However, we will have time for questions. And please look for your question box in your app. No worries, we'll email you a copy of this recording. Thank you for joining Backstage for an insightful and timely discussion. Without further ado, Casey, please tell us about migrating catalog metadata.
Thanks, David, and hi, everybody. So that was a great introduction. So, what more do I need to do? So if you're here today, as David said, I'm assuming you've been thinking about a future ILS migration. You're gearing up for one, or maybe you're on the other side of a recent one and are live in your new system. Regardless of your reasons for popping in, I am glad that you're here. And I hope that you do find something worth taking back and thinking about as you move through this process. For those of you who know you'll be going through a migration very soon, you may be thinking, well, what do I need to do to prepare my data for that move? So today my goal is to kind of talk specifically about various things to consider for your data when you are looking at a migration. But really quickly, as far as our perspective on it is, we've been partnering with libraries and cultural heritage institutions for over 35 years now. We help increase access to collections by providing authority control, data cleanup services, cataloging, and more. And we're based out of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and Provo, Utah, and we have account reps and on-site teams throughout the country. So how exactly does Backstage integrate into this type of work? Well, first and foremost, we're not the ones who actually do or oversee the migration. That's usually up to your ILS vendor, or if you're using an open source solution, that's usually up to the support company you've selected, like Bywater, OpenFifth, or Equinox, if you've decided to go that route. Our expertise is more on the data management and the cataloging work itself and the cleanup there. My team works and has worked with various libraries, institutions, and networks as they prepare for their ILS migration. And we've seen firsthand how preliminary work in your catalog can save you some headaches down the road. So as we all know, hindsight is often 20/20. So we asked some folks who have done an ILS migration what sorts of things that they might suggest to a library planning on that kind of transition. And the responses sort of fell into two categories, which we're going to call planning and preparing. Under the planning side, you would have everything that could impact your workflows and how you communicate with your team and outside vendors. I think the most important recommendation in there was to ask your ILS vendor for someone who you can talk to, who has completed this migration pathway. Then there was a suggestion to make a list of all of your current tasks and figure out how those are handled in the new system. Look at what reports are available, what indexing options are there missing tools, and will you need to find a way to work around those in the future in your new system. Under preparing, we've put everything that you could proactively do to ready your catalog for the switch. So what can you do to prepare? Well, there's a slew of things, really. Test extracts. If your vendor allows, see if you can upload parts of your catalog to test the system, maybe even more than once, to see what's going wrong. Typically, we hear of one of the big ones being diacritics, displaying funky. Find out if this is a good opportunity to clean up your non-standard metadata. Maybe there are issues that can be batch remedied, or you can merge fuller versions of your existing records together. Is there anything that typically isn't migrated or won't be migrated, like circulation data, maybe some of your patron data, or maybe your authority records and serials aren't migrated? What do you need to do about these, and how should you, do you need to split them out ahead of time? So those are just a couple of things to kind of think about as you're moving forward. So if we distill these a little bit further, we get 4 things that we're going to focus on today really quickly. First being diacritics, brief record upgrades, deduplicating your bib records, and then finally authority control. So let's start with those pesky diacritics. Diacritics and non-Roman characters are a frequent cause of frustration for both us and our library clients. For our clients, the frustration comes in when diacritics don't display properly in their new system. And the frustration for us is when we can't help a client correct those diacritics. Sometimes we can try to help identify and remedy those display issues with some internal tools that we have, but if I'm honest, sometimes we can't. Sometimes it is as simple as setting the leader as UTF-8. Sometimes some records are corrected that way, but others within your catalog may be made worse by that approach and need an actual conversion to UTF-8. You could even have a single record that contains both MARC 8 and UTF-8 characters, and those are going to cause an even bigger headache. Additionally, you may have seen the black diamond of death. So it's that little black diamond with a question mark in the middle. This is an instance where there's really nothing that we can do to correct those unless we know that it is a copyright date. Then we can do an easy single replace for that. If you have a particular subset of records that you know have diacritic issues, for example, we had a previous library that had a juvenile collection of Spanish language materials. And in their case, it was more cost effective to replace those records entirely with a new record from either OCLC or LC, as opposed to trying to fix those manually. But sometimes you may have to allot some time for manual correction of your diacritics or other special characters. So what can cause these diacritic issues? There are 2 main things that I've really noticed over the years. First and foremost, copying and pasting from a website into your cataloging utility. Now, this isn't always a problem, but if you have a catalog that, say, requires MARC 8 characters, you'll run into characters potentially becoming corrupt if you're copying from a website that is strictly Unicode. Back in my cataloging days, I kind of did that a few times, and I learned my lesson the hard way. Secondly, an old migration may have caused the diacritic issues themselves. So it could be that in the past, records were extracted out of an old system in one character set, but were loaded into the new system as a different character set, but without that conversion happening before loading. This often causes corrupt characters that cannot be easily corrected. And this is one that I have seen a lot more recently. So definitely keep an eye out for that and look at what your system needs. So one of the things you'll want to do is test and retest those data extracts and reloads into your current system just to make sure that everything is displaying properly. You may need to adjust your workflow to ensure that records you're importing is the correct character set. So you may need to do a transformation there. But of course, once things look okay in your ILS, you want to double check how things look in your discovery layer. So don't forget to check that too. I know some discovery layers use Unicode, some, while the ILS uses MARC 8. So definitely double check all of your locations where you have display of your data. So since I had mentioned in the last slide, maybe needing to replace records that have correct diacritics, let's talk about other bib records that might not meet your standards. So migration is a great time to start thinking about other ways you can enhance your brief MARC records, or finally create MARC records for those items that are not currently in your catalog that have been waiting to join their friends in their catalog. Z3950 connections to external databases such as Sky River, OCLC, National Library of Medicine, Library of Congress are really great ways to explore your options there with replacing your records. Some of these database connections only have the possibility to search via ISBN. So if you're interested in something a little bit more reliable, we do offer solutions that will fine-tune what types of records we allow to be returned with a search. So for example, if you have a brief MARC record that maybe contain only an ISBN, author, title, publication information, we can require any incoming record to be a specific encoding level, or at least require LCSH. If you have some records that are pretty robust but are missing just the 6XX subject fields, we can certainly insert those particular fields instead of replacing the entire record itself as well. So on the left of this slide that will be coming up is an example of a brief MARC record we received from a library. There are a few different things that happen here. As you can see with the 300 field, we have information that looks like it may have been offset at some point. So what we would typically find in a 245C and publication information field is all smashed into that 300. So as we ingested this record, we focused on an ISBN search first. But then when we identified a potential record, which is on the right, we verify that it is the correct record. So we look at the publication date from the 008 fixed field, we look at the title, we look, if there were an author, we would also look at the author to try to verify that the incoming match would be appropriate to take as a replacement. And then we would merge in the original 001 field and whatever else information the library might want into their new record, so then they can overlay their previous brief record with a new fuller record. So that's definitely something we're thinking about. And of course, if you have maybe just a spreadsheet of information, we can certainly use a spreadsheet of ISBNs and this very basic data in order to create MARC records and go through this process of searching an external database as well. So there are definitely options for brief MARC as well as non-MARC lists of things and various inventories. So next up, let's talk about duplicate MARC records. So there are all sorts of reasons why you might end up with multiple records for the same manifestation in your catalog. This can be human error, vendor record reloads, maybe new libraries are joining your system as well. Migrations, again, are a great time to consider taking care of these extra records that should realistically be a single bib. Some ILSs have the ability to do a pretty basic deduplication and merge, but sometimes you need just a little bit more flexibility with what is allowed. For example, instead of always merging items into the first bib record that's present in your catalog, you might want to choose the largest, which would make a lot of sense in a lot of cases. Or maybe you have a consortium and you want to select a specific library to act as the master record. Regardless, I'll also mention that you want to make sure that whatever deduplication you're doing, you're taking into account the form of the item. So you don't want to merge e-resources into physical resources. You don't want to merge AV into print text. So that's something you need to keep in mind as well if you're going through this process, either on your own or with another vendor. I will say strict ISBN searches may cause more problems than not, as ISBNs may not be correct within the bib records. So there may be a subfield Z, well, there may be a subfield A in two records where it should be a Z in one, and which would cause those to not merge, but you know, if they're both an A, they're gonna force a merge. And honestly, I've even seen OCLC numbers that would not be reliable either. I've had a library in the past that instead of deriving a new record from OCLC, they just edited the OCLT record itself for their local item that they had. And so the OCLC record in WorldCat was now completely different than the one in the library's catalog. So in some cases, that OCLC number may not be reliable either. So that being said, when my team looks at deduplicating a catalog, we approach it in a step-by-step process. So we will split your print materials from your AV e-resource materials, and we'll look at both numeric and textual data within the bib records. So if we find that multiple records have the same ISBN, for instance, we identify that as a potential match. We then go a step further and look at additional information within the bib record to make sure that the records are indeed for the same manifestation. So we verify the potential match based on the item, author, title, publication information, edition, form of item. Once all points are checked and validated, then we merge the records into a single bibliographic record. We do tend to default into merging into the largest bib record, and we merge items and holdings and whatever notes that you want to make sure you retain, but we can always adjust which record is your favorite and you want to keep as your master. In addition to receiving your merged records for this process, you'll also receive an HTML report that gives a side-by-side view of records that were merged. So on the left will be the master record that was retained, and on the right will be the record that was merged into the master. Fields are color-coded, so they're easy to read, hopefully. So you know which fields were matched against, which fields were verified, and then which fields were merged into each record. We will also provide you with an Excel report of what we consider near matches. These are records that were similar, so they had some sort of match point that matched, but they were unable to be verified as an identical item for one reason or another. So in the first example at the top, we have 3 books with the title Adrenaline, and 2 of those have the author Jeff Abbott, both of which were published in 2011. But if we look at some of the other data within the record, such as the publisher and edition, we'll see that they do differ enough to keep those records from merging altogether. In the second example, we have 2 titles with the same ISBN, which could potentially have forced that match. But with the verification on the title and date, we did not allow these 2 records to merge. So you can see where there could be some issues with allowing just an ISBN match and merge. So the matching and verification requirements that we use can be altered to ensure that we're merging as many records as possible without making those incorrect matches. Typically, we'll see somewhere around 5% of records being matched and merged, but in some rare instances, we've seen, even as high as 30%. The final point that I want to, on our list, talk about is authority control, which does include additional global bibliographic record cleanup. So maybe your old ILS will not be able to export your authority data in a format that your new system will accept. Maybe you want to incorporate some global cleanup or record enrichment that you hadn't taken advantage of before, but have wanted to. Or maybe you just want to start fresh with a new authority file because you don't really trust the accuracy of your current one. All of these are great reasons to consider what we call a base file, which involves generating a new authority file and cleaning up your bib records at the same time. So essentially, the phases of the authority control process are validation and cleanup, authority matching to build your master authority file, and then of course delivery. So before starting on the authority file, our process does involve validating and enriching your bibliographic records. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about each of these just for the sake of time, but at the end we will have a QR code that will take you to our wiki that you can peruse that gives you a lot more information about what is available with that validation and cleanup and all of the things. So definitely be sure to check that out. Our validation system is governed by hundreds of different rules that bring your MARC records up to current MARC standard, as well as current cataloging standard that your library uses, whether it be AACR2 or RDA. This does include correcting of the formatting of certain fields, correcting obsolete fields and subfields themselves, checking and correcting indicators, correcting your GMD if you still use it, or we can just chuck that out and remove it, and many, many other potential changes. Really, the sky's the limit on what you want to do there. While it's not part of the validation process, any RDA enrichment that you want to be done is taken care of at the same time as well. And all of the options within validation and RDA enrichment are completely customizable. And so while we do have defaults that we recommend, we certainly realize that not everybody was you know, every library was made out of the same mold. You all do things differently, and that's totally fine. So we make sure to customize our services to what you need. And you're more than welcome to tweak options that we currently have available, and then request new processes as well. So after validation, cleanup, and the various enrichments are finished, we start building your master authority file. First, you have the option of selecting which thesauri you would like to have matched against your headings. If you know of one that isn't listed in our wiki that you would like us to explore, we'd be happy to talk further and see what's possible about us acquiring that vocabulary for you. And if you do have a separate authority file of maybe local names or subjects, we can always include that as well to ensure that you're not losing those. And then you have a backup copy of those local authority records as well. All of your bibliographic headings are then matched against your desired vocabularies. All headings that find matches have authority records returned to you, whether it be for that full heading string or a partial match. And then we keep a copy of those here at Backstage for any future processing that you might want. Deliverables of the base file process include your updated bibliographic records, new and clean and pretty to ingest into your new system, all authority records that were retrieved during the matching process as well as any reports related to the cleanup and the matching themselves. You would then replace or overlay your previous authority file and then upload your updated bibliographic records. Now, whether or not you overlay your authorities or load new will depend on if you've already migrated over your original authority file, though we do like to recommend loading fresh whenever possible, but we realize that's not always doable. That's fine. And when that, just a quick thought, if you are loading an authority file into a system that already has your authority file in it, you want to make sure you are using the correct match point. So there are some systems that change the 001 of the original authority record. So in that case, you'll want to match on the 010 field of the LCCN. So make that mental note as well. So after your migration is complete and the dust has settled, we do offer some ongoing authority control options to keep your headings and authorities maintained. The first is our current cataloging, which is where we process any newly cataloged bib records in the same manner that we just did as your base file. And then you would pair this with one of two services. So the first one is our authority notification service. And this is where we send you updated and deleted authorities as LC issues them on whatever frequency you want. Then you would load those new changed new authority records into your system, overlay the previous version. Or the other option is what we call our bibliographic update service. And this is kind of a superhero version of the notification where we are still providing you with the updated authorities, plus we are also changing your bib record for you. Now, this particular service comes in handy if you are migrating to an ILS that cannot handle a global change of your bib records when an authority record has changed. So that's something we can certainly do for you. We keep a copy of your entire database on our side. So there are certainly options for you moving forward with that. So just a couple of points related to ILS functionality and authority records that you might want to think about, take into consideration when determining which ILS is best for you. One of them, of course, do you use non-LC authority records? If so, find out how your new ILS handles linking non-LC bib headings to those authority records. Does it link them? Does it take into consideration that subfield 2 with the source of the vocabulary? Or does it completely ignore that subfield 2 and link whatever the first authority record is that comes? So think about that. Additionally, how does your ILS handle partially matched bib headings? So what this means is if your bib heading contains subdivisions that the authority record does not have, will your ILS still link the portion of the authority record that exists? Or does it leave it unlinked? So for example, if you had a heading that had like a subfield A, subfield X, subfield Y, but the authority record had only that subfield A. Is that authority record still going to link to your bib heading that has the additional subdivisions, or is it going to remain unlinked? That may inform your internal workflows moving forward regarding the updating of headings based on changed authority records. And therefore, it might also affect your ongoing maintenance services that you may or may not decide to use from us if you want to pursue regular authority control in your new system. In terms of systems, we consider ourselves to be ILS agnostic. We have performed all of this type of work in all of the major ILSs out there. Processing is all the same, but deliverables may vary depending on the ILS you select. If you are migrating to Polaris, our base file service, so that initial retrospective of your full catalog, is often included in your initial migration service contract. Any other desired work or ongoing maintenance, that's something you and I usually contract directly together. We also tend to contract directly with Equinox for Evergreen or Koha migrations, and they typically include base file and ongoing maintenance. But we have quoted other services with them as well. So be sure to talk to them if you're looking at them to be your support provider about other desires that you have for your catalog. We have also performed these services with Sierra, Symphony, Alma, Folio, Destiny, Tind libraries, and we work with many Koha libraries that either manage their catalog independently or with other support vendors like Bywater. With these particular systems that I just listed, we typically contract directly with you and not with the ILS or the support vendor. Whoops, wrong direction, sorry. So just as a quick review, make sure that you're testing your new data in your new system. Does it look okay? Are your authorities linking the way you expect them to? How do you feel about the quality of the rest of your data? Are there records that you want to be merged? Do you have subpar records that you want to improve or replace? Like I said, migration is a great time to think about those things. Now, as far as timing is concerned, any data work for an ILS migration, most of the time, this work happens between the final data pull from your old system and the go live of your new system. Of course, that's not always a hard and fast rule, and that will really depend on your existing timeline and what you want done and the responsibilities of your team members. So if there's too much going on, on your side of things, we can certainly either do this far before your final data pull or even after your go live. We're really flexible, so we just want to work with you on what makes the most sense for you, your team, and your, propensity for migraines. So really, regardless of where you are in your planning process, whether you're, just thinking about an RFP for a new ILS, whether you've selected a vendor or you're already live in your new system, we're happy to talk to you about potential solutions to your specific needs. And of course, we're always happy to run samples for you. All of those are complimentary with no commitment required. We just want to be able to help you start thinking about things. Now, I know we haven't covered everything that could potentially happen in a migration, but I'm just hoping that at least some of the things we talked about today at least gets the wheels turning and kind of triggers some conversations internally about what your expectations and desires are for your catalog, and if there are any projects that you want to kind of incorporate into this whole process. So again, please check out our wiki with the QR code, and feel free to reach out to us with any kinds of questions that you might have. We're always happy to talk, whether that be through email. We're happy to jump on phone calls, Zoom calls. We just want to help you think about things and see how we might be able to help you in that regard. So thanks for your time. I know this was a little bit short, but we like to keep things short and sweet. But now we have time for questions if you have any.
Yeah, thank you so much, Casey. We do have actually a number of questions.
Great.
So question regarding the comparison between the brief and the enhanced record. It was noticed that there were 3 subject headings in the brief record and 2 in the enhanced. And I think the questioner is just wondering if this is normal for when the records are merged.
So yeah, so in this particular example that I had given, it was actually where we were still in the sampling process that with that particular one. And so if the library decides that they want to merge any of their pre-existing subject headings, we're happy to do that. You know, you're not just limited to what that new record has. We can merge over whatever fields that you want from your initial original record. So we would want to make sure you have the fullest version possible. And so if that includes merging over subject fields, we're happy to do that.
Thanks, Casey. Another question, what if the ILS doesn't support in the trickle changes to the authorities?
Yeah, so the ones that I know, well, the one that I know that doesn't for sure yet is Folio. And I know that that one is still in development, but as of right now, at least the last time I talked to someone who is currently on Folio, which was just a couple weeks ago, that's not in place yet. So we do offer that bibliographic update service for those Folio clients right now until Folio certainly comes out with that that trickle down change availability. So yeah, it's coming, just not ready yet. So
great, thanks. Another question, has Baseball worked with book systems?
Book systems, not yet, no. I know we've had conversations with folks from book systems, but no, we have not worked directly with them thus far.
What about options for 856 validations to remove URLs that are no longer working?
So we do not have any tools currently in place that will check the 856 fields to see if they are dead links or if they've been, but if you happen to know of ones that have particular phrasing, particular setup of that 856, we can always easily strip out things if we're given particular parameters in order to do so. But right now we don't have current tools in order to check them and then strip out those that are dead.
Great. We had a question about working with other vendors for if we've have lists of libraries that we've worked with that have gone from, say, 0 to Symphony. And I think probably the best way to answer that is that we can work with reps in your area where we can give you some of your other libraries that you work with within your groups, and that way you'll have some folks to talk to and reach out and get some recommendations from. So yes, we can do that.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Another question, we're primarily talking about MARC services, and are we looking at WebFrame and linked open data as well?
Right. So yes and no. So here's the thing. Most of our libraries right now are not looking towards BibFrame yet. Because there is still so much in flux, and just making sure that even the BibFrame to MARC conversions are working appropriately. And I know that there are a few different flavors of BibFrame out there. So while we have not explored it greatly, we know that folks are starting to look at it a little bit more than they were even maybe 3 years ago. In terms of like linked data type things, in terms of adding like URIs to your headings that match, we can certainly do that for you as a stepping stone to get to that BibFrame point. We do work with non-MARC metadata as well, so there are tools that are behind the scenes, but not specifically BibFrame related yet. So
great, thank you. Can we add missing series information or series information that is inconsistent across the series? And what sources do we use for series information?
This is something that will be available shortly. So
Great.
we do partner with Metametrics and their Lexile Measures database. And so we will have access to some series information there. I think that's usually for juvenile materials, but that will certainly be available once we get all of that programmed behind the scenes. That's something we just acquired this year, well, this summer. So we are working on that. And I know we have some of that information also available from the Valgro ProQuest folks as well. So those are still in programming stage, but they will be available soon to be able to retrieve some of those missing series. Granted, it'll be a limited data set, but additionally, we could always try to go through that process of matching against an external database like OCLC to pull in a missing series if your record doesn't have it. So there are a few things we can look at for sure.
Can you see the questions there? There's a question about working with particular vendors.
Yeah, Civicans-itis. It's been a long time. So many years ago, I worked with them specifically for a cataloging project. But I don't have any libraries currently on that LMS. But that doesn't mean that doesn't mean we can't. So yeah, usually what we provide has worked with all of the LMS, ILS providers. So we're certainly happy to do some testing with you just to make sure that what we do does work in your system.
Great. I think that's all the questions that I see. And thank you very much, Casey, for your wonderful presentation. Thank you very much for everybody for joining us today. As we mentioned in the beginning, we will have this recorded and we'll send it out to you via email. Please feel free to reach out with any other questions that you have, and we'd be happy to follow up. Thank you so much for your time. Take care, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
All right. Thank you, everybody.